emergency for the first time in about
This is Jim, and
Receiving this message. We are Ken Jennings and John Roderick. We speak to you from our present, which we can only assume is your distant past, the turbulent time that was the early 21st century.
Fearing the great cataclysm that will surely befall our civilization, we began this monumental reference of strange and obscure human knowledge. These recordings represent our attempt to compile and preserve wonders and esoterica that would otherwise be lost.
So whether you're listening from an advanced civilization or have just reinvented the technology to decrypt our transmissions, this is our legacy to you.
This is our time capsule. This is the Omnibus.
You have accessed entry 604.1J0210, certificate number 37614. The Hudson Brothers.
Why don't you take your rendezvous? Oh, rendezvous.
Now, I know you are a student of pop music.
I am. I'm an amateur.
Yeah, but
Amateur scholar.
you've impressed me many times with your deep knowledge of music, like rock music and all of its offshoots.
Listen, let it never be said that I didn't enjoy rock music. It's
Yeah.
one of the great 20th century genres.
Do you think there is any rock music
Left?
now, or will there be rock music going forward?
Yes.
What does it do now? I mean,
Exactly.
why would you make it?
No, there's no reason to make it.
Right.
But there are still so many people in Brooklyn and similar places making it,
Yeah.
and it'll be fine. It'll never, a girl will never scream. People will never show up at the airport again.
Right.
All that's over.
Yeah.
It's not new, but it'll all be just fine. A lot of it'll be very catchy. Have like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of how good choruses.
Sort of.
There will be some pretty good guitar work.
Yeah. There's amazing guitar work. There are better guitar players now than there have ever been.
Our advancements in guitar have been doubling every
It's true.
5 years.
I go
it's like
on
chip size.
YouTube now, and there are 18-year-olds. There are a lot of girl lead guitar players, which there never were in my era, right? I mean, there was not. You would have been flabbergasted to see an 18-year-old
That was probably
girl.
holding us back. We only had half the candidates were able to play lead guitar.
I watched a YouTube video just 2 days ago of like a teenage girl who could play every Dimebag Darrell solo perfectly, and all while looking at the camera with a super placid look of just like, oh, this is what I'm doing, and just all over the neck.
Some of this is internet, I believe.
Yeah.
Like one of the first things I saw on Usenet in 1992 were like elaborate fights over guitar tablatures because people were finally able to say, no, this is the tuning. No, this is the tuning. Like, and you could just see how to play whatever. And now it's videos. Now you can watch a video of 20 people trying to play the solo you're trying to play.
Well, I read an interview with this girl, and she said, well, the difference is that I learned all of these solos by ear. And so I was like, what? How could you even differentiate the notes? But I think a lot of it is that there are all these grown-ups who loved rock music, who introduced their children to it from like a hyper fan perspective when they were 3.
I have a niece who...
Oh, I know. I gave her some grunge rock stuff.
Exactly.
Oh, I have another.
She knows every Mudhoney B-side. But
I have something for her. I ordered a print from my friend Lance, who was the Pearl Jam official photographer for a long time. And along with the print that I ordered from Lance, which was not of Pearl Jam, he sent me.
You don't have a big Pearl Jam poster framed in your den?
I don't. But he sent me two actual, like original photographs. One of Mother Love Bone, and one of a shot from the big Pearl Jam concert where Eddie Vedder climbed the the thing and to get his microphone back. Right. The one that was out at Magnuson Park or whatever. So I have these two original, like, real photos taken by the real dude, and I thought of your niece, and I want to bring them to you.
That would be perfect.
Blow her mind.
But, for many people, that would be a recipe for utter disinterest. Like, the reason why young people want hip-hop is because their parents were trying to push rock on them. And now that their parents are trying to push hip-hop on them, honestly, these kids it's probably why everybody's going to turn to some kind of weird twee pop that didn't exist before.
Yeah, or just glitchy loops, man. It's all going to be glitchy loops.
Should we do one right now? Should we do a glitchy loop for the future? It's good.
Thanks.
Just sample that.
Just sample that, rap over it, send it to us. No, wait, don't rap over it. Like, sing super twee vocals over it.
Yeah, sing vocals about your serving tea to your dolls.
But as a student of pop music, and I consider myself one too, rock music, and like the canon that begins in 1955 and goes to what?
Exactly.
1990.
We were post-rock, but we didn't know, maybe?
Yeah.
I mean, we were there for the dying years.
It was there. I mean, grunge being the one that we think of being Seattleites, but post-grunge, there wasn't like a unifying rock moment after that, right? Rap rock doesn't count. Yeah.
That was actually
and then
and because we're older than that, we also grew up with whoever, the Rolling Stones or U2 or whoever being the biggest band in the world.
And I guess I was part of the indie pop decade, but that was a specialist.
Do you feel you were trying to keep it going, or do you feel like you actually worked against it? Did you bring about the decline of rock?
I think at the beginning of indie rock, we still believed that there would be a next thing. Yeah. And so we went.
And maybe it'll be Bell and Sebastian. Why not?
Exactly. Like, everybody's going to love Arab Strap. And then about halfway through the indie years, it was very clear that indie pop was never going to take over the world. Limp Bizkit was on the top of the charts, and that was indefensible by any argument. And so that was the beginning of realizing, like, oh, we are a scene, we are a movement. It is global, but it's a small percentage of the people.
It will be a paragraph in the history books.
Yeah.
Also, at this time, indie rock continued to exist.
Yeah. And
at the bottom of the page.
Every once in a while, some indie pop band had a hit that kind of crossed over.
Let's hear it for whatever that Mazda commercial was.
Yeah, Modest Mouse had a song or whatever, but it was never a thing. And 20 years from now, I mean, no one will remember it. But I do think about myself and about you that anything that happened in the 60s or 70s, we just received through osmosis to a surprisingly deep degree.
We did. And it seemed to me like it was happening in some distant Arthurian golden age, even though the Beatles broke up after you were born and just a few years before I was.
Right.
I was born.
But you could tell me this, you could probably do an entire omnibus episode on the making of Rumors.
Sure.
And not leave any aspect of the story out, right? Yeah. And there's that depth of kind of, the Eagles and their relationship with Jackson Browne and Linda Ronstadt. You can kind of piece together.
You'd have to be a person like us who we didn't seek it out, but you just kind of develop it through reading enough Rolling Stone magazine.
Right. Right. It's interesting enough to us that when if somebody came in and started talking about Jackson Browne, I don't think I would pursue the conversation. But when you realize there's a connection between Jackson Browne and the Eagles, like if you started talking to me about the Eagles, I wouldn't be that interested. But the fact that they all were roommates, it
was Jan Wenner's dream, right? That for some reason there would be a magazine that would just be talking about Jackson Browne well into the mid to late 90s.
I know, insane to think.
But it worked. It worked.
Did.
We were all shaped by it.
But also the kind of relationship between bands and the charts, and the fact that Black Sabbath never charted, or Led Zeppelin, they weren't.
That was big for me, by the way.
Is that right?
Yeah, being the kind of in the same way that like I had a love of baseball that came out of like enjoying keeping score and reading about sabermetrics. Like I very much loved that my music tastes could overlap with numbers and charts and those Fred Bronson books of number one hits. And you'll never guess the story that led to These Boots Are Made for Walking topping the charts. You know, the Reprise was ready to drop Nancy Sinatra, but then and to this day, I can still talk about that crap. Could not be less relevant.
And the internet is great for it because you can look at a chart of every number one hit of 1974. And it's such a fun thing.
Time machine.
Because you know 80% of those songs by heart. And you're like, whoa. And then to think that was on the top of the charts in September. And then on September 15th, that song was at the top of the charts. It's just like it forms a part of our universe in a way that somebody even 10, 15 years younger would kind of maybe never have absorbed.
There's something very perceptive about that guy in High Fidelity arranging all his records autobiographically.
Yeah.
You know, the order in which he experienced them, not the alphabet or chronology, but, you know, it's the story of his life in music form.
I still make top 20 lists of the top 20 songs of my life, which is such a...
I thought you were going to say of the year. And I was no, you don't.
No, I couldn't. If you played me a top 20 of 2021, I don't know what I would think. You could not, I bet you couldn't pick if I had made some kind of thing, you could not pick the real songs from the fake ones, I think, if I were to, you know, if I put 10 real hits of 2021 and 10 careful or funny pastiches. Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't think I would. And what's funny is in 2010, I still knew every song. So, and I had since 1978. So, yeah, I just hit a threshold where either I could no longer assimilate new music, or from my perspective, it was indistinguishable from what had come before. So every song I heard, I just was like, oh, this is that.
I think it was, for me, it's when Casey Kasem died. That's my day the music died. I couldn't tell you anything about
top 40.
I couldn't tell you anything about top 40 radio.
Yeah.
From then on.
Yeah, I guess, and some of it is I don't understand the band that influenced the band that influenced this band. So what I hear is, oh, this is a melody that originated with the band Chicago in 1972, but it's been through 7 bands by the time it got to this band. They're not aping Chicago. They're aping some 2014 band. Yeah. And I got lost somewhere along the line.
And there may not be melody at all. I mean, to be a music fan today, you might have to be, to some degree, at some level, over the idea that melody is what powers popular music, which we always assumed was true.
Well, and I listen to it now, and I really hear that it's all loops, because that's the way that people compose. You know, you put a little thing down, a little glitchy loop, and then you compose a song over it. And that's not how songs were composed before, you know. And what it does is it eliminates the chord changes that distinguish a solo or a bridge, because you can put changes, but they're always over the
loop would work if it actually progressed.
And so there's a kind of monotony or drone to it, which I find appealing, but there's never that like Carpenter's era shocking chord change. Where
if only music today was as shocking as the Carpenters.
You know, if you listen to the song Rubber Band Man, like the chorus just comes out of nowhere relative to the verse. And it's just it's exciting because it's like, well, key change. And that's often missing in contemporary music. But I don't think prior to my research that you could have convinced me that there was a 70s band that had any kind of notoriety or public presence that I hadn't heard. Yeah. You know, I was listening to the radio all through the 1970s. I heard every song that troubled the charts, but also just in the subsequent decades, just my time watching the old gray whistle horse and all that stuff.
Gray whistle horse? Is that what you call the American Bandstand or
American Bandstand?
120 minutes?
Yeah, like all that stuff. I've gone back in. I've watched all of the Bee Gees early works. Like it's just like watching videos of tractors.
Yeah. I have watched a lot of shows that I don't think actually exist. Hullabaloo and all these.
Yeah, right.
All these British shows that pop stars were on, all these 70s variety shows.
And every episode of Dick Cavett where he's talking to Charlton Heston about what he thinks about the Vietnam War.
It's possible that I've seen more Dick Cavett clips than my parents have at this point.
Yeah, right. But in fact, I discovered a new band.
Congrats.
Thank you. And it's a band of brothers.
Is it the Jonas Brothers?
It's a family band, very, very like the Jonas Brothers.
Is it Hanson?
It is very, very like the Hanson brothers. They are the pre-brothers. They're the precursor of the Hansons and the Jonases.
They're the Hanson.
They are the Hudson brothers.
That does not sound like a band.
The Hudson brothers. Bill Hudson, Brett Hudson, and Mark Hudson.
The Hudson brothers sounds like, I don't even know what it sounds like. A cracker company or a vacuum repair store.
The Hudson brothers cereals.
It sounds industrial.
Yeah, it does, right? Hudson brothers, they make turbo encabulators.
If I was their A&R guy, I think I would say, please change your name to, even just Hudson might be better.
Well, you're not wrong, because the Hudson brothers went through several permutations over the course of their years and had several different names. Brett and Bill and Mark were born in sort of peak baby boomer years, 49 through 53, and born in Portland, Oregon. Oh. Not a place that you think produces a ton of...
Not in that era.
Of the big stars. They don't come out of Portland.
I guess the Venture's out of Tacoma, but there's not a lot of other boomer era music.
Well, Louie came out of Tacoma.
I don't think people know that.
Yeah, I mean, there
Paul
was...
Revere and the Raiders eventually.
There was a Northwest scene, and it was like a lot of American music scenes at the time, very regional. There were regional charts. There were big regional DJs. And the Hudson brothers came up in that era. And when they were still pretty young, mid-60s teens, they started a band together, initially called My Sirs.
My Sirs?
My Sirs.
What is MYSIRS?
Yes, My Sirs. These are My Sirs. Maybe it was something their mom called them.
There is no era where that's a good band name.
Hello.
That would be weird if you're a 50s doo-wop band, and it would be weird if you're a 2010s noise pop band.
These are my little sirs, I'm sure their mother once said.
Are they like the Osmonds? They wear sailor suits on Ed Sullivan?
They look pretty Osmond-y, actually. And then they were hired by a local Chrysler dealer to perform at the debut of the new 60s model Chryslers.
Yeah.
And so they changed their name to the New Yorkers and performed under the New Yorkers, at least for the extent of this Chrysler ad campaign for some Portland
They're kind
dealer.
of becoming a doo-wop group somehow.
And you think about, of all the bands that could plausibly call themselves the New Yorkers, a group from Portland in the 60s, that's pretty far. That's pretty far.
Guarantee they'd never been to New York.
And then they changed their name to Everyday Hudson.
Everyday Hudson.
Everyday Hudson.
It's like a car tagline or something.
And then eventually just Hudson.
See, that's good.
Hudson is better than My Sirs. But they had... they were popular regionally. They were kind of, a bubblegum pop vocal trio, not doo-wop, but very Beatles-y kind of. They played guitar and it was soft rock.
We're up to the late 60s by now.
Well, yeah, mid to late 60s. They were signed initially to Scepter Records and put out a single or two that didn't really trouble the charts. Scepter had a long history in the 50s and 60s, kind of debuting.
I don't know Scepter.
Well, we're going to hear from a lot of record labels in this story.
Don't research them all.
But, are you looking at Scepter right now?
Yep.
Scepter.
The Kingsmen, speaking of Louie Louie, were
right.
on Scepter. It looks like they must have been around for a while because you get B.J. Thomas, Dionne Warwick.
Yeah. Scepter actually, played a role in the American music culture.
The Guess Who, the Isley Brothers.
And then they actually signed to Jordan Records, who had the Kingsmen's. They were the one that put out Louie Louie. Jordan.
Is that it's not a Northwest label?
It's a Northwest label.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah. And they were putting out singles that got played on Portland, Tacoma, and Seattle radio stations. And they would do regional appearances throughout the late 60s. For a while, they signed to Warner Brothers. They were on Decca. All of these were situations where an A&R guy would be at an event, would be at a concert. He'd see these three handsome young brothers who had melodious voices and sang close harmony.
They were good looking in kind of a wholesome way,
Osmondy way,
teen idol-y way.
So they'd get signed by an A&R guy, and they'd put out a single, and the single would not particularly trouble the charts. They would kind of get played on regional radio, but never caught fire anywhere, never produced a record contract that was like a 4-album deal or anything like that. They were, like I say, on Decca, and then they got signed to Playboy Records and put out a song called Leave and It's Over. And Leave and It's Over made it to 110. Just under the top 100.
What do they call that? The bubbling under?
Yeah, the bubbling under charts.
I didn't know the Hot 100 had an underbelly. But it does.
The bubbling under. Because you don't want to get to 110 and just be like, sorry, also ran. There's a bubbling under chart.
But it does mean somebody's counting all the way down to 200 or so.
Well, yeah, and there is a top 200
yeah.
even. And 110, you can often launch from 110 and the following week be at 65, at which point you're a contender.
You're bubbling over.
You're bubbling over.
Put a lid on that. Turn down the heat to a gentle simmer. Casey Kasem might say.
So now we're in the early 70s in our story. And because they had a bubbling under hit, Leave and It's Over, they're getting bigger gigs opening for touring bands, and they open for a handful of national acts. And at some point are seen by Bernie Taupin, songwriter of Elton John.
John's collaborator.
Bernie Taupin thinks that they are, they're an undiscovered potential smash. Why would, this is the Bee Gees, basically.
But Bernie Taupin's not a producer or anything. He lucked out in that Elton John happens to like his weird overwritten lyrics, right?
Yeah.
Bernie Taupin's not any kind of rock or pop tastemaker.
Well, no, but by 1973, Bernie Taupin has the affliction that all successful music people have, which is that they are a genius and they do need their own record label. And he and Elton did have their own record label in the early 70s called Rocket Record Company.
Rocket, like Rocket Man.
Mm-hmm. And so Bernie signed Hudson to the Rocket Record Company.
The history of rock is just guys named Bernie signing young people.
Signing guys named Hudson.
Signing young people's lives away.
And if you think about it, the Bee Gees have had their
three brothers,
their first big blast of hits, and the Bee Gees also, pre-disco,
they're
they're celebrities, certainly.
big quasi-British invasion band.
Right.
Britain by way of Australian invasion band.
People are curious about who Robin is dating and who Maurice is dating. You know, they're in the tabloids.
I'm curious about that too, even the ones that are dead. I'm more curious now.
Who Robin is dating
Is
now.
one of them dating Madame Pompadour in heaven?
Ouais.
No way to know.
C'est possible.
Is it possible that now we know which of them is not strictly straight and is dating Rene Descartes?
They all seem pretty straight, even considering how
Just because they're balding?
much they were denigrated.
Not all balding
No,
people are straight.
Just based on who they dated.
Oh,
But you're right. They might be dating, Caesar
It's
right now.
it's a near certainty that at least one of the Gibb brothers is dating Caesar.
Dating the ghost of Caesar. So Bernie signs them and produces some tracks for them. Those tracks don't race to the top of the charts either, but because Bernie and Elton are behind them, they get into the larger mix of 70s rock pop culture, and their sound at this point is very, very Beatles, George Harrison, post-Beatles career, ELO, adjacent, lush vocal pop. It's very warm and mellow and inviting.
That's what we all wanted back then,
They're super mellow.
especially those of us that were smoking a lot of grass.
They're super cute. Mark,
They look kind of non-threatening, but not too non-threatening. They're trying to thread the needle.
Mark is the second oldest, and I think he wears a mustache, which sets him apart. In the Bee Gees, in the Jonas Brothers,
There's definitely a Paul McCartney cute one, and then like two kind of
there's always
musician looking ones.
There's always in these bands one really cute one kind of cute one, and then one brother that is a little horsey faced. But they're all...
You could like repopulate every human facial feature from like a Badfinger cover,
Right.
like they span all the facial eccentricities that
existed at the time.
at least in Britain.
Yeah.
Which is really a hotbed for facial eccentricity.
Well, these are Americans, right? So
I
they
know.
look American too, don't they? I mean, there's something...
They do. They just look like, the sitcom kid that actually grew up to be a little awkward looking.
Yeah, there you go. That's exactly right. And if they had a number one hit, I mean, you can think right now, picture the guys in Blue Oyster Cult.
I always am.
There are more than one of them that you can actually picture their face just sitting here, right? You know every member of Led Zeppelin as though they were relatives. So if the Hudson brothers had a number one hit, maybe we would think of them differently.
Right.
Like Christopher Cross isn't that handsome.
Who's the quiet one? Who's the...
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, so now the story gets a little complicated, and I wasn't able to find for sure the answer to this question. But on the internet, there are a lot of people who say that the Hudson brothers' big break came in 1974 when they, as a result of their relationship with Bernie Taupin and their bubbling under the charts, appeared as guests on the Sonny and Cher show. Now
This was a golden age of bands coming to your living room that way.
That's right.
No music videos. You'd have to wait for somebody to go lip sync with the Smothers Brothers or Johnny Cash or something.
But there were a ton of variety shows that featured a band. And it wasn't like a talk show that had a band. They would show up and they'd do some skits. And, Ruth Buzzy would slide by on a skateboard, and Sonny and Cher would do a song with you, Dean Martin. Now, there's a minority position on the internet that they did not actually appear on the Sonny and Cher show in 1974.
Oh, it's not clear whether how can this be lost?
Well, the majority opinion is that they did because this explains their subsequent success.
Is this some Mandela effect thing?
But
This
there's-
band you haven't heard of may not have been on the show you've never seen.
There are some people who contend they did not, and this is one of the instances where it casts doubt on the entire Wikipedia enterprise, because in a single paragraph on Wikipedia, let me see if I can read it to you. Here, it's the second paragraph of the Teen Idols section of Wikipedia's entry on the Hudson brothers. After they appeared as guests on the Sonny and Cher show in early 1974, a producer for CBS was impressed by the brothers' stage presence. Later on in the same paragraph,
Multiple editors here, a problem that Britannica, for example, does not have.
although stated above and incorrectly accepted as fact, the Hudson brothers never appeared on the Sonny and Cher show in early 1974.
Why would you just not edit the entry?
The only appearance by the Hudson brothers on Sonny and Cher was October 31st, 1976.
Look, if the test of a first-rate intelligence is being able to hold two opposing ideas in mind at the same time, then this paragraph is everything that is great about the internet. This paragraph is more evolved than the rest of Wikipedia.
It's wonderful to think
Teach the controversy.
that Wikipedia is so diverse. And then, in doing subsequent research, I was not able to reconcile these two positions. But I'm going to go with the fact that they did appear on the Sonny and Cher show, and the producer of an ABC producer was impressed by their stage presence, because it's the only thing that can account for the following phenomenon, which is that it was CBS, a CBS producer.
The Tiffany Network.
CBS, on the basis of their appearance, or ghostly appearance, on the Sonny and Cher show,
Schrodinger's variety show,
thought, wow, these three brothers who have been bubbling under the pop charts for a decade by this point really have what it takes. They've got the showbiz vibe, and they were offered a show of their own, the Hudson Brothers show.
despite never having had any musical success. They seem ready for TV.
No super duper hits, but they had a lot of charisma with Sonny and Cher. They did some comedy bits, and they just seemed like, this was the era of, let's put them on TV, see what happens.
Sure.
And so they got a late summer kind of replacement slot.
That's a result of youth culture, by the way, that whole let's put them on TV and see what happens. It's middle-aged people realizing we have no idea what teenagers will want. Let's just try a bunch of stuff because we don't have any metric or heuristic.
And this is post Monkees. It's prime years of Brady Bunch and Partridge Family. The idea of teen pop musician types being on TV. It was a genre, right? And the brothers at this point are in their early 20s, early to mid 20s. And so the Hudson Brothers show debuts at the end of July in 1974 and runs to the end of August 1974. So just a month, but it's a hit with the kids. It's a Wednesday night show. And so CBS gets psyched about it and signs them to do a Saturday morning show. So they don't know what to do with it exactly.
It's a cartoon?
But put it on with the cartoons.
Are they going to solve mysteries?
And they give them a show called the Hudson Brothers Razzle Dazzle Show.
It's the Hudson Brothers Razzle Dazzle Show. Starring Bill, Mark, and Brett, the Hudson Brothers.
Weren't they already having some razzle and even some dazzle in primetime?
They did have Razzle Dazzle for that month in primetime.
I bet they had some like glitter or sequins on their big collared shirts.
They did. And then Saturday morning, it was like, maybe this is for slightly older kids that have graduated from Scooby-Doo. Now, what's crazy to me is from September of 1974 to August of 1975, there was no one more watching Saturday morning television than me. That was
Sure.
highlight
of the week.
Sure. I was between 6 and 7 and was planted. And I have no recollection, none at all, of the Hudson Brothers Razzle Dazzle show.
I don't either. I'm starting to think this is a Mandela effect where I came from the universe where the Hudson brothers don't exist. They had 2 successful television shows?
Yes. Well, so far in our story.
Only 2 so far. Who knows what'll happen next?
The same month that the Hudson Brothers Razzle Dazzle show debuted, they now signed to a new record label, Casablanca, which famously produced the Bee Gees. So, a few years later, the disco Bee Gees.
Yeah.
So far, they've been on Scepter, Jordan, Warner's, Decca, the Playboy record label, Rocket Records, and now signed to Casablanca. They released a single, So You Are a Star. And this was the single that got the highest for them. A little bit of foreshadowing.
This is their big hit.
It got to number 21 on the charts.
Oh,
and
that's legit.
when I listened to So You Are a Star, it felt extremely familiar because of all the ELOE sounds.
But you were sure you'd never heard the song.
But I do not recognize the song. And it's funny because the chorus comes in and it feels so familiar that I felt like, whoa, I have heard this. This is going to deliver me to the payoff where I go, oh, it's this song. But it took me to a different place I didn't recognize. So I don't think, even from a passing car, that I actually heard So You Are a Star. But it went to 21. And then on Casablanca, they released what would now be their second record after the one on the Bernie Taupin label. And their second LP was called Totally Out of Control.
Wow.
And Totally Out of Control.
They're kind of bad boys now.
They are. And they're getting a little bit, they're getting a little heavier because the tone of rock music had started to get a little heavier by 74. It's not so sweet. It's getting a little bit, raunchier. Not raunchy.
A lot of bands that tried to do kind of sweet Beatlesy pop at that time famously washed out at it.
Right.
And today we love Big Star and the Raspberries, but nobody was buying those records because they didn't sound like Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, Kiss is out by this point. Like it's a new moment, and Totally Out of Control goes totally all the way up to number 179 on the charts.
With a bullet. With a very slow bullet, like a Matrix slow motion bullet.
Right. Super duper slow motion bullet. Their third record, which comes out really quickly after their second because they're feeling a creative burst. Their third record is called Hollywood Situation.
Oh, because they're big showbiz stars.
Yeah, they're in a Hollywood situation
They know
at this
about the
point.
Hollywood Situation.
That record gets to 174. And in a weird quirk, because the third record comes out so quickly after the second, Totally Out of Control and Hollywood Situation are both in the charts at the same time, both in the 170 range.
They have a specialty. They have a bandwidth of the chart that they specialize in, kind of like the UHF versus VHF.
Right.
They're like a 170s band.
That's right where they are. And yet they are pop culture. They're part of the 70s firmament. They're guests on other programs. They have their own show. They are they're sort of well known for making appearances. They appear on the Sonny and Cher show again, or some might say for the first time in 1976. So they're still really in the mix.
Why have we not heard of them? Are there like 100 bands like this I've never heard of?
Well, this was the spooky thing that hit me like a lightning bolt. Wait a minute. Is there a whole separate universe of bands in the 150s who had long careers and made multiple LPs and were on television And I was watching television and I didn't notice them.
Television was one of my favorite things to watch in
Yeah.
the 70s.
Big time.
Do you think we could start a new career as like rock critics who exhume the lower reaches of the top 200? You know, like compilation albums, 33 and a third type criticism, only of albums that never got above 150.
I think we could. I mean, the whole Northern Soul movement in the UK was sort of a product of UK singles collectors who were finding all these unknown soul records that sounded amazing.
And connoisseurship culture loves this.
Loves it.
When some new, because you've seen all the great works, capital G, capital W. You've seen all the great movies. You've heard all the great bands. You know, you want the little herd diamonds in the rough.
And these songs, all of them, sound great. Like they're just not quite they're, you know, not quite the quality that would put them into the ranks of.
So you're actually thinking
The hits.
they're a step slow. Like it's not just that this same song in the right place at the right time should have been a number one. It really is like you can hear that there's a second tier of.
What's the difference between a killer chorus and a good chorus? And it's that. The 70s had so many killer choruses. You know, Baker Street or whatever. How are you going to how are you going to get a chorus that's as good as Baker Street?
You do know it when you hear it. And I think you're right that the culture tends to be right about this stuff. Like, do you remember when everyone rediscovered Mr. Blue Sky?
Yeah.
Because it got used in. And everybody just unanimously agreed, yes, we had been underappreciating this song. There's something inherently about its structure and its chorus and its production
Yeah,
that puts it a step above other stuff from that time. Even people who had never heard it before.
the Decemberists covered Mr. Blue Sky during the period of its resurgence and must have like, I guess, encouraged hipsters everywhere to think, well, how did we miss this whole time?
I thought it was just in an ad or a movie trailer or something, but no, it must have been the Decemberists
Well, if you
teaching
think,
us how to love again.
if you think about that, the Volkswagen commercial that featured Pink Moon,
Pink Moon, yeah.
turned Pink Moon into a huge hit and Nick Drake into a beloved musical character when his records came out.
He wasn't around to enjoy it.
No, they sold 100 copies. It's just all 100 of those people started a band.
He's in heaven in a relationship with Spartacus, and he's probably annoyed looking down on Earth that Volkswagen is finally making him a household name.
He's like, pang, 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 pang.
But I bet a bunch of other people bought that record or some compilation record and thought, oh, there's just a lot of other wispy but less memorable things in the same vein. There's a reason why Nick Drake didn't catch on.
Well, yeah, but it's crazy that there are 5 songs off of that record that I know every note of. You know, those are great choruses.
I'm a post Volkswagen Nick Drake fan. You actually in on the ground floor?
No, I'm a post. And the thing is, I went back to my friends in pop, right? And there were guys, you know, the guys in the Posies or the guys in Young Fresh Fellows all said, yeah, man, Nick Drake, like we've been listening to him from the beginning. And they had,
Yeah.
right? But I remember seeing that record on the shelves at a record store in New York with a sticker on the CD that said, as heard on the Volkswagen commercial. Because the first time I saw that commercial, I was bowled over by the sound.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, there was a TV a car commercial that had "Mercy Mercy Me" by Marvin Gaye that also I think reintroduced people to that tune. Now that record was a huge hit in its time, but kind of like the Blues Brothers, right? 15 years later, nobody was listening to it until that TV commercial introduced it to a new generation of 22-year-old white kids. But the idea that there's all this music lurking in the 1960s and 70s that just got passed over because the level of quality was so high. I think if the Hudson Brothers tunes came out now with a little bit stronger backbeat and maybe like a looped bass line, they might be as good as anything on the charts.
There's some polyester line that separates the unarchaeologically exhumed records from this time. We need to exhume the polyester casket.
Well, they had a couple more singles. One of them, Coochie Coochie Coo. This is from the Sharo
Featuring
era.
Feet Charo?
It got up to 108. And then a song called Rendezvous got as close as any of them to So You Are a Star, made it to number 26 on the charts. And then they released their fourth LP, Ba Fa, which landed right between Totally Out of Control and Hollywood Situation at number 176.
I mean, 2 top 40 hits.
Yep, 2 top 40 hits.
Here's a list of bands that never had a top 40 hit. King Crimson, never a single one.
Understandable.
Well deserved. But you wouldn't say that about
Very
Tom
influential.
Waits or the Ramones or Traffic or Soundgarden or the New York Dolls. You might say it about Humble Pie.
Soundgarden, Black Hole Sun didn't get into the top 40.
Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy. Well, Black Sabbath probably never had a top 40 hit, but they were not, none of those bands were operating in a top 40
Those were album
genre.
bands.
Right.
Yeah.
And these guys were top 40
These guys, that was
all the way.
should have been their bread and margarine because nobody ate butter in 1975.
In 1980, they released, so they appear again on the Sonny and Cher show, and they now switch record labels to Arista and put out a record called Help Wanted, which got up to 70 on the charts, which was, it's doing better.
That was their best charting album?
Yeah.
Seems like it might be.
Yeah, it was. And then in 1978, they have another television show.
What?
This one co-starring with Bob Monkhouse, the British
Game show host. That guy was on Family Feud when I was a kid.
Well,
their version of it.
So his game shows that he hosted were not Family Feud, but Family Fortunes.
Oh, right. They renamed it.
And not Hollywood Squares, but Celebrity Squares.
They didn't name it after the British version of Hollywood?
Which is what?
I don't know. Pinewood Squares?
Mayfair Squares? No, Bob Moorhouse was a British game show host.
You know what he's kind of famous for today? He's part of the controversy over who actually wrote the joke, I would like to go quietly like my grandfather in his sleep, not screaming and yelling like the passengers in his car. I guess that's often credited as a Bob Monkhouse joke.
But it isn't one?
Well, the thing is, in the U.S., we saw it on Jack Handy's Deep Thoughts, and I don't know if Jack Handy has ever insisted that he wrote that joke or not. It could be parallel evolution.
That's right. Two geniuses came up with it on their own.
Could be.
But Bob Monkhouse and the Hudson Brothers co-starred and on a kind of television variety show toward the end of the run of variety shows, kind of Carol Burnett era, 1978, and the show was called Bonkers. Bonkers, starring the Hudson Brothers and Bob Monkhouse. Now,
I didn't know anybody tried to make Bob Monkhouse happen in the U.S.
1978, I was 10 years old. I was loving television shows that had names like Bonkers, featuring funny skits.
Yeah.
And it was, I think there's a school of thought that says that it was a kind of no, it wouldn't have been proto. It was in the school of Saturday Night Live. It was a little bit, risky, fun. There was a group of girls called the Bonkerettes that did Benny Hill type,
this is post
Living Color Girls.
Post Laugh-In, but maybe with kind of a British angle.
So it was,
British comedy had, the success of Monty Python in the U.S. had really kind of changed the potential for that kind of comedy to make it over here.
It was filmed in the UK, and unfortunately it didn't get, there was a television strike, and the show kind of got preempted in England and didn't, its full run was never aired. In the United States, it didn't really trouble the charts.
It did air here on network?
It did.
Okay. Just nobody watched it.
And as a result of that level of fame, now they'd had multiple television shows. This is their third TV show. The Hudson brothers were featured, like above the title featured, in a film called 0 to 60 that co-starred Darren McGavin, who you may recall as the chief bad guy in The Natural.
The dad. That's how you think of Darren McGavin?
It is.
I assumed you would be a Kolchak, the Night Stalker guy, because I'm a dad in Christmas Story guy.
Yeah, no, I Darren McGavin, of course, is like, but I think, I mean, he's a fixture from my childhood, but I think of him as primarily as the bad guy in The Natural. And then that movie also, 0 to 60, also featured Joan Collins.
Who was kind of the sexy British flavor of the month. There.
Right. And it has, 0 to 60 was remade because it is 100% the plot of Repo Man.
Does Repo Man admit that its heritage through 0 to 60?
I don't know, but but 0 to 60 featuring the Hudson brothers is definitely like a slapstick kind of comedy.
I can't believe these guys are stars of all media.
Yeah, Repo Man
I've
didn't do it the same. In 1980, they were guests on Love Boat. They put out a new record in 1980, now on Elektra. So they've been on
every American record,
every label. The new record in 1980, they went back to just being called Hudson. So no longer the Hudson brothers.
They would have been the last band called Brothers, except for maybe the Doobie Brothers, who weren't brothers.
Right. And then the Jonas Brothers later.
Right. But it was out of fashion then to be the ex-brothers.
They made another film then in the 1980s called Hysterical, which was a horror comedy featuring a ghost that haunts a lighthouse where the Hudson brothers live. And the ghost was played by Julie Newmar.
At least they got a sexy ghost.
So,
Murray Hamilton plays the mayor. At this point, that would be a takeoff probably on his role as the mayor in the Jaws movies.
Right.
It's not just a coincidence.
That he's the mayor of a town with a lighthouse.
Charlie Callis plays Dracula, which would make this his second best lighthouse movie. I'll leave that as an exercise to the viewer.
Well, eventually the 80s rear their ugly head and the Hudson brothers break up.
They can't break up. They're brothers.
They're brothers, but their music career kind of comes to a they each decide at this point. I mean, in 1983, they would have now sort of been in their 30s, and they each kind of pursue their own career. Mark, who was the mustachioed brother,
Mustache Mark
continues in the music business and ends up co-writing Aerosmith's number 18 hit Living on the Edge.
Oh, wow. The first Hudson joint I can hum in this show.
He produces their record Just Push Play, Mark Hudson, and then in the 90s becomes Ringo Starr's
butler,
music director, and produces like 9 of Ringo's albums in the 90s and 2000s, basically keeping Ringo afloat throughout that entire period. Mark produced the 2005 celebrity compilation Tears in Heaven, where a bunch of celebrities We Are the Worlded Eric Clapton's homage to his child.
No one more deserving.
In response to the 2004 tsunami.
Wait. It's not a charity record for Eric Clapton.
No.
It's a charity record for the Indian Ocean tsunami of December 2004. Okay.
So the song transmogrified from being about Eric Clapton's son to being about everyone who died in a tsunami. 100,000
Indonesians.
Somehow I didn't really know about that either.
No, I didn't either.
But Mark Hudson had a very varied career in the music industry. He sang backing vocals on Crazy for You by Madonna, another song I know well. He was the comedy next door neighbor on the television show starring Gina Davis, Sarah.
I don't remember Gina Davis's sitcom attempt.
It only ran for a month.
1985. So she hasn't really even broken. I mean, she's been in Tootsie, but this is before. This is before Accidental Tourist and Thelma and Louise and so forth.
He was the band leader for the Joan Rivers show.
Really?
Yeah.
The highly touted Fox late night show.
He was her Doc Severinsen. And then he got a job on the X Factor as one of the judges, and he was known on the X Factor as Weird Beard because he dyed his beard different colors.
So this is just recently. He's kind of been, and you all know 70s music producer Mark Hudson.
Right. As Weird Beard, and he's judging X Factor contestants. And as a result of that, he wrote the song Chico Time for X Factor winner Chico Slimani, which went to number 1 in the UK. His first number 1 hit.
I can't believe this is real. Let's see, when will this air? Okay, you're a week early for the April 1st show. 2 weeks early for the April 1st.
Well,
show.
maybe you should maybe we should switch it around so it's April Fool's, but it's real.
You're not going to reveal at the end of this that none of this happened?
No.
It's not some Forrest Gump type Z-League figure?
The youngest brother, Brett, became a television producer and produced A Current Affair.
The 90s era half-hour kind of scandal-heavy TV news magazine.
Right. He wrote the Burt Reynolds vehicle, Cloud 9.
I have no memory of the Burt Reynolds vehicle, Cloud 9.
Co-produced a Burt Reynolds late period.
90s era Burt Reynolds movie?
Yeah.
Post Cop and a Half?
Late period Burt Reynolds, post facial surgery Burt Reynolds.
2006. Wow, Huey and
Paul
Rodriguez.
Pretty close to the end of Burt's career.
And life.
And then produced fairly recently, 2013, less than 10 years ago, the stoner comedy Hansel and Gretel Get Baked.
It's really called Hansel and Gretel Get Baked?
Hansel and Gretel Get Baked.
Famously, they do not get baked. The witch gets baked. The only important thing about Hansel and Gretel is that they will not get tricked into an oven. That's the only reason we know about them.
Right.
I assume that's the joke of the title, but come on.
It's got to be the joke, and yet
it's not a great joke.
But, Hansel and Gretel Get Baked, and this maybe says a lot. It starred Molly Quinn and Laura Flynn Boyle.
Laura Flynn, Twin Peaks Boyle?
Carrie Elwes is in the movie. And and I should say, all the Hudson brothers are still alive and still working. So they're
probably listening to this.
And one of their children listening to it, probably, almost certainly. And hopefully one of their children listening to this will reach out to us and contact us, because Bill, the cute one, the star, if you will, of the band, or the one that was kind of the most star-ish.
The Tiger Beat Ready member.
During his 70s heyday, during the Hudson Brothers' run, he initially kind of had a celebrity relationship with Jill St. John. Jill St. John being a 70s pinup star.
And maybe Robert Wagner ex? Yeah. Or maybe future. When were they married? Oh, only in the 90s. Oh, okay, never mind. She was formerly in the 60s married to Jack Jones, the pop singer.
Yeah, Jill St. John,
TV themes.
Famously beautiful.
And smart. She's like the smart bombshell of that period. Like, isn't she always like, and she has a 170 IQ or something?
Oh, yeah, and has a degree in physics.
Isn't that the thing about Jill St. John? Maybe I'm making this up, but if I am, I'm okay with saying nice things about Bond girls they didn't deserve.
She was a Bond girl?
Yeah, Diamonds Are Forever.
Oh, there you go. He also dated Ally McGraw.
Wow. He's really punching above his weight there, isn't he?
But punching above his weight doesn't even begin to encapsulate his romantic life.
Okay.
Because in 1976, he marries Goldie Hawn.
Really?
When Goldie Hawn was at the top of her career.
Okay. I now realize I know this band exists.
His children include Oliver Hudson and movie star Kate Hudson.
Okay. I'm so relieved at this point that I'm not from the universe where the Hudson brothers don't exist, because I did know about Goldie Hawn's pre-Kurt Russell musician husband.
Yes.
He was in a variety show pop trio.
Yes.
Who knew?
Well, we all do now. Every omnibus futureling knows.
The record has survived to the distant future.
So Goldie and Bill get divorced, and Oliver and Kate are raised by Kurt Russell, and Bill Hudson kind of claims, or famously sort of agitates, that Goldie and Kurt estranged him from his children and kind of kept him from playing a larger role in Oliver and Kate's life. And only in recent years have they reconciled. After he and Goldie Hawn divorced in 1980, he married Cindy Williams of Laverne and Shirley.
Wow. This guy made a list in 1975, and he methodically marched through it.
And he and Cindy Williams were married until the year 2000. They also have 2 kids.
Huh.
And Bill continued to appear on television and in films in increasingly bit parts. I think most prominently, he was on 3 episodes of Doogie Howser, MD.
Do you think the Hudson brothers are listening right now because this is the longest anyone has talked about them possibly ever?
I did a show on a different podcast several years ago where I mentioned Captain and Tennille and talked about Captain and Tennille being kind of influential on me as a kid. And I heard from Tony Tennille, whose daughter or niece was listened to the show and contacted Tony and said, "You got to hear, he talks about Captain and Tennille." And she sent me an autographed photo from the time when they were called, the Dragon family or something like that.
Daryl Dragon.
And she sent me a bunch of memorabilia and signed lyrics, and I kept in touch with her for a while.
Did you do this whole show just in hopes of getting a signed Jill St. John headshot?
What I'm hoping is that somebody listening to the program knows the Hudson brothers or some combination. I've been wanting to marry Kate Hudson, and it's all the way back to Almost Famous. I think I missed my chance because she married a weird, beardy rock star.
But the wrong one.
The wrong one. But no, I'm hoping that some relative of Allie McGraw or some child of Cindy Williams is listening to the show and can put us in touch with the Hudson brothers, because I really want to laud them for the incredible impact they made on 70s pop culture.
It's time to bring them back. It's time for the Hudsessance.
It's a Hudsessance. I think you and I should start that record label. We should write that 33 and a third book.
And that concludes the Hudson Brothers. Entry 604.1J0210, certificate number 37614, in the omnibus. You're obviously going to want to contact us, Hudson's and your legal representatives. You can do so. You can find us on social media at Ken Jennings, at John Roderick, jointly at Omnibus Project. We were at the Omnibus Project at gmail.com. You could send us physical items. Send us your old sequin vests.
Sure. Send us your Hudson Brothers singles.
Send us your mustache wax to P.O. Box 55744, Shoreline, Washington 98155. You can find fellow connoisseurs of the Omnibus Project, some of whom I'm sure are Hudson Brother fans and are shocked at my ignorance. You can find them by looking for the Futurelings on Reddit and Discord and so on. We need and appreciate your support. If you are just stricken by guilt that you have been sucking off the content teat, as it were, of Omnibus for years,
Rightfully so.
and your great aunt, just died in her estate home in Sussex,
And left you some Dogecoin
and you would like
from her
to,
estate.
and your budget allows you now to support the Omnibus Project. Good news, you can do so and you'll receive many amazing perks for your support. You can read more about that at patreon.com/Omnibus Project.
Futurelings from our vantage point in your distant past, before we started a record label that resurrected hits from the bubbling underchart.
Forgotten near hits of the 60s, 70s, and today.
We have no idea how long a civilization that would care at all existed. But we hope and pray that the catastrophe we fear may never come, and that people will continue to discover the music of the 70s well into the next century. If the worst comes soon, this recording, like all our recordings, may have been our final word. But if Providence allows, we hope to be back with you soon for another entry in the Omnibus.